Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Vernon Root, and I'm a council member of the Saugeen Band Council. I'd like to start off, first of all, with just a few comments. This is one of our trial bases, of course, using this method of communication. Unfortunately, the way the COVID numbers have turned out in Ontario, we are forced to use this kind of method because of the numbers that were allowed and not allowed inside or outside. So this is our first attempt to making a communication link with members of our community. But before we start, I'd like to have you join me with a little bit of prayer for ourselves, for our community, to make sure that this communication works well for us and that we're able to accomplish what we'd like to try and accomplish for our community. So if you join me in a meditation, I'll speak in my language, and we'll start off with that. So, Shamnito. Kagwajmagowana, we not more young mumpy. Hagen in tower wind the canomagion, we win magion. Hagen ungo ashwebok, Haminaga when a car chigion. Patinut ampi skungunning. Emis no gained mong, must again dung pemods it. Patinut ke J.E. wish by one bedemguk. Kogwaj wish Tomin gig in went your jamnado. Kogwaj mago and we not more young. Up to gay Miss Noctonish nabe. Up to gay and when done we nabadana canagago. Either skin in went and pee, we just don't canawena, we wedgem nabademguk. Not much long on pijam the door. When we just don't kind of go in the we were doing Magion, a Jwebok, Lunga, we know get one as Jwebok Nigan the care. We got cup go jamado, a hog even pea, we've been not more young than an oxshik. We got just go make it werner. How can I go emijo? We got.
Vern Root not only is our council member but a former chief of the community. So Ani Bajo, I'll go on and quit Disney cause, just providing you with a brief overview of tonight's meeting. On behalf of the council, I'll extend a welcome to everybody. And as Vern had mentioned, are doing our first virtual community meeting. We'll be discussing 3 topics: the opioid crisis in the community, a residency code, and policing. Just briefly on the mental health and addictions, we have a community comprehensive plan that we're working on to address the opioid crisis in the community. We've been working with the health director. We met with her just today, and we're coming up with the framework for a mental health strategy. We have CAMH also working with us to address the issue of harm reduction. On the issue of policing, we are looking at a dedicated OPP detachment housed at the fire hall with a detachment sergeant and officers. This is a temporary fix to address the policing issue in the community. It'll be a contracted service, so we'll have to pay extra for it. But we're also looking to 2022 when we'll have our first year of the next 5-year funding cycle for Aboriginal policing. Mark Gibson from PST Law is our lead on the legal negotiations for that. And I will be bringing more of a detailed update in the coming days. Finally, the residency code. We met today as well and had a good discussion around the residency code and the fact that it needs to be revamped or revisited and needs to have some revisions made to it. So we'll be looking to form a community committee and be looking for community input, not just only council and leadership, but also community members for their direct input to the shaping of the new residency code. So for this evening, a brief overview of the issues, overview of the health crisis. There'll be an update from the health staff. We'll be discussing some issues around the residency code. Again, that needs to be revised and a lot of work needs to be done around that code. So we'll be looking for community input. A brief recess and we'll be overviewing the police. I will give an overview of the policing issue, which I pretty much gave, but we can have a little more detail on that as well. And then there'll be a presentation from Camcom Security and Q&A afterwards. So that's basically our virtual meeting for this evening. We don't want to drag it out for too long, but we want to drill down to the issues and have everyone have an opportunity to at least ask some questions and provide some input. So with that, I'll say Chimigwech, and I'll turn it over to Doran.
Thanks, everybody. My name is Doran Ritchie, a Saugeen First Nation newly elected council member. I just want to take a few minutes to say thank you very much, the community, for electing us for a new term. There's a lot of work ahead of us. We wanted to provide this update to let the communities know that we are taking everything that the communities say very seriously, and we want to provide this in a timely manner. And so moving right along, I'm going to be contacting the health director here because she's going to call me. And then we're going to have a bit of a Q&A just between her and I. She's on the road right now due to the fact that there's another personal issue. So we're working with what we can right now. Priscilla will be joining us any minute on the phone right now. So we'll be hearing from her an update kind of on some of the concerns that the health staff has faced, what they're up against today, some of the challenges with that. I know a lot of the community members are wanting to know what exactly is the plan, to address the opioid crisis and other issues. So we're just gonna wait here, and here she is right now. I'm just gonna call her. Good evening, Priscilla.
Yes, good afternoon.
How you doing?
I'm doing fine, and you?
I'm doing well, thanks.
Oh, good.
So we're moving right along here quite quickly, and so we did the introduction and the overview of the meeting, and I guess what we're looking for now is just to have a bit of a questionnaire with you. And first of all, congratulations on your new role. So I think right now what I'll do is I'm going to turn it over to you. And so my first question is, and again, welcome to back to Saugeen as the new health director. Maybe just give a quick background on who you are, and then we'll go from there. I have a series of questions for you.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. And so my name is Priscilla Southwind, and been in the health field for over 20 years. Worked at grassroots level and again at the regional level. I was just telling my husband, I said, in relation to all in my career, various jobs that I've had, that it prepared me for this role here. And I'm quite honored to be in this position. It's nice to be back home and to service our people. And so that's it, kind of in a nutshell.
Great.
In a nutshell.
Awesome. Okay. So I guess my first question, this is some of the questions that arose in council, and of course some of the community members, can you provide an overview on what the health staff have faced since the time of COVID and the shutdown, and how the health staff have dealt with the opioid crisis that has happened in conjunction with the COVID crisis.
So going back, so first and foremost, I want to apologize if, because I'm joining the meeting by telephone, and if I lose signal, I apologize. But I will do my best to, answer the questions. So in regards to COVID, so if we go back to March, and then I'm aware that offices were closed, and but at the health center, we are considered essential services. So our NADAP program, our community health nurse, along with home and community care, have been working diligently through the COVID to meet the needs of the community. So we're looking at our elders, we're looking at our high risk group in relation to our community members living with addictions.
Right.
So they have been in relation to supports, doing wellness check-ins. They've been providing harm reduction, just the ongoing support that they've been providing both to our loved ones who are living with addictions and also with the families.
Mm-hmm. Okay. If I could just elaborate a little bit on that question, in terms of the staff and the reduction of staff because of COVID, what has it been like for your frontline staff dealing with the opioid crisis and everything else happening?
First and foremost, we are understaffed. Looking at the mental health and addictions program, we only have one full-time NADAP worker, and we have brought on board another NADAP worker.
Hello?
For funding.
Sorry, you just cut out there a bit there, Priscilla. We heard that you hired one more NADAP staff worker, and then we lost your signal.
Okay, so yes, we do have one full-time NADAP worker.
Right.
And we've contracted another NADAP worker to come on board, and she will be joining November.
In November, you said, sorry?
Yeah. So I'm currently looking for funding for 2 other mental health addictions worker.
Okay, great.
Because we are understaffed.
Right, okay, great. So the next question I have for you, so during the pandemic, what staff have specifically been allocated to deal with any opioid crisis, or addictions issues? Can you just describe to the communities what services are available directly to our members present day?
So going back to the beginning of the pandemic, so we've had one NADAP worker, and I understand that we had another NADAP worker, and they have been providing, I would say, 24/7 care. So they've been on call, they've been dealing with crisis here in the community.
Right.
And it's still like that, it's still happening today.
Right.
In relation to, because the need is so great in our community. And there's only one full-time NADAP worker, and fortunate enough, we have another NADAP worker on board.
Okay. And sorry to the community if some of that feed was lost. The question was what services are available during the COVID pandemic. What services are available, and what we heard is they're with limited staff at the health center. We have one NADAP worker and hopefully 2 more in the very near future to help address some of the work overload as it relates to the opioid crisis. Is that correct, Priscilla?
Yes.
Okay, great. So my next question is, I guess we've met a few times now with all of our health professionals, our community nurse. We've had a few strategy meetings now. So having said all that, what can we expect, or what can the Saugeen community expect in the near future in terms of plans moving forward?
Okay, so we're looking at a wellness center. I know in the past it was called the RAM Clinic, but it's not the RAM Clinic. It's going to be a wellness center. So yes, RAM Clinic is going to be coming in and provide additional services to our community in relation to having a psychotherapist in the community, having an RPN in the community, and having a pharmacist in the community to distribute in regards to the Suboxone. So that is just one component of the wellness center. So in relation to the current resources that we have in our community, such as our NADAP workers, also our family well-being worker, our building healthier communities worker. So we, our community health rep, so using our resources that we have now to support our client, our families that are living with addictions.
Right. Okay.
And then also to drawing on the added resources, so like our Ontario Works program, our housing program, our employment and training program. So it's our cultural program, when you look at the 4 quadrants on the medicine wheel, so ensuring that we have a program that addresses all those
Right. Okay.
areas.
Right. Okay. Good.
So then when you look at that, you look at mental, you look at physical, you look at spiritual,
Right.
emotional, yeah.
Okay. So I get, just to elaborate on some of the challenges, I know you've expressed some of the challenges that you're facing. Everybody felt this in Ontario and Canada and the world. During a lockdown, we did lose a lot of staff. We did lose a lot of momentum. What do you anticipate as some of the future challenges? Is it related to funding? Is it related to resource staff? So I will break it down in those 3 questions. First of all, what are the 3 key challenges? And what I'm anticipating is it's funding, people, and of course addressing the bigger picture is how we as communities perceive our members, our brothers, our sisters, our loved ones. In the bigger world we call them addicts. But in our community, when we look around, we see brothers, we see fathers, we see aunts, we see uncles, we see sisters. These are our people. And I would, I want, some of your thoughts, as the health director, on how we should actually address that issue on breaking that stigma down of calling people addicts because they are loved ones, they are our family members. How can you provide some insight on how our community members, or what messaging should we convey to our membership on how to view our loved ones?
First and foremost, we need to change our way of thinking in relation to addictions. So I'd like our community members to think of it this way. So it's an individual living with addictions. So first and foremost, they're a person. That may be, a member, a family member, or maybe a loved one, a neighbor down the road, a community member. But first and foremost, they are a person, and they're living with an addiction. So we need to, that stigma that's attached to an individual that is living with an addiction, they see the addiction first. And unfortunately, that's where we still need to uphold the dignity of these individuals. And they are a person, and they are living with an addiction. Secondly, in regards to, as a health director, in relation to wanting to, when I look at when I look at the NADAP program, and first of all, we need more workers, so we need more resources, we need more funding, and we need to think out of the box in relation to developing programs to help our people that are living with the addictions. Mm-hmm. Help our people in regards to the families that are struggling with their loved ones living with addictions. Right. So in relation to developing programs like land-based programs, day treatment programs, offering support, giving tools and strategies and how to deal with our loved ones. Mm-hmm. So advocating for them, being that voice, changing our mentality. We need to be open. We need to be more understanding. Mm-hmm. And when I think about in relation to addictions, so there may be unresolved trauma, or medically, like in relation to it's in our genes. Mm-hmm. So there's two ways of looking at that. It's in our genes or unresolved trauma. Right. So we need to, when we gain a better understanding as to why, then I think we can understand the individual living with the addiction and supporting them.
Right. So notwithstanding the issues around funding and the lack of resources, meaning staff, I guess what I'm hearing overall is that you're really kind of pointing out that this is a community effort. This is not just the sole responsibility of the health director and the staff or policing. This is a collective effort amongst the community members and everybody in this community.
Absolutely. When I go back to the wellness center, when I describe like the resources that we have at the health center, but also our external departments. So like I had mentioned, Ontario Works, our housing. So working in collaboration with those different departments, right, to support, our community member that is living with addictions and their families.
Right. Okay. Great.
So we all need to, this is not just a health program issue. Mm-hmm. It's a community issue. And we need to, instead of pointing fingers at various, programs, departments, it's a collaborative, right, team effort to help combat this epidemic.
Right. Okay. Great. So no doubt this is probably generating a few questions online as we speak right now. So I'll hold off on those till the end of the presentations. But any kind of final thoughts for now, Priscilla?
I've only been in this position for a little over a month. I've been quite busy, but again, it's teamwork. Right. And I really want to emphasize in relation to my team, my staff that I have at the health center, and how they give themselves every day, both during the day and even on weekends, mm-hmm, and support our community. So they're doing an awesome job, mm-hmm, and we look forward to tearing down those silos and working collaboratively with the rest of the departments.
Awesome. Well, thanks for now, Priscilla. We look forward to the Q&A session here in a little bit, and we'll call you back shortly.
Okay.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. Okay, bye-bye.
Okay, great. So I think for now, what we're going to do is we're going to just keep moving along. We're going to have a presentation and an overview on, I think, some of the background and the mechanics of what a residency code actually is and some of the history. I know there was a draft presented in the past. So we have Elder and returning counselor and former Chief Vernon Root coming to speak to us a little bit about the residency code. So I'll turn that over to him. Thank you.
Aha, amigotchkini. first of all, it's an honor for me to be able to communicate with you through this new method. And maybe I should say this old fella's gone through a lot of new things in my life, and here's another new type of communication that I've just entered into. I want to start off, first of all, with the picture behind me. There's an individual, his name is Kelly Root, and he was just a young fella back then in the 80s, and he drew this mural on the back. And of course, that was to remind ourselves, this is our background. We are Anishinaabe people, and we don't live in tents. But at one time in our past, we likely did. But it's to remind us, this is our past. Also, the seasons are also reminded of us through that picture. So it's a nice reminder, and it's also a nice mural. And the individual who painted that, Miigwech Kelly, for the work that you put into it way back in the 80s. So that means that you're getting old too as well. Another point I wanted to make, and Dorn touched on that, and he said elder or even older person, which meant that I'd been around a little bit. On the other wall, there are two pictures. One picture is a former chief, James Mason, and the other picture is myself. Between those two pictures, I would say we have an accumulation of around 50 years of leadership experience. I worked with Chief Mason for a number of years, and we talked about things that we need for the community or what the community should have to advance and develop. And that kind of eventually leads me to where we are with these codes. In the mid-'80s, we talked about what the need would be for having membership. Our own membership, not Indian Affairs, our own. And at the time, I think Bill C-31 was introduced in the House, and that was the first time that we had a chance to really talk about what those changes were going to be and the impact that it's going to have in the community. Well, it had, and it did, and it is. So with that kind of conversation that we had back then, we started to develop something. And some of you might recall the membership code. There's a rough draft of that membership code. We'd done that in 1988. We put that together and said, hey, you know what? Let's look at a membership code for our community, and maybe we can start looking at what people want for themselves and for their development of their community. As we developed the membership code, there were sections in there that started to address areas like residency. Matter of fact, Section 8 said residency. How do we include residency in a membership code? Well, we scratched our heads there for a while because we really didn't have an immediate concern at the time. We didn't have the issue of addiction to drugs back then. We did have addiction to alcohol, but we didn't have the addiction to drugs. So when we look at the residency, we said, okay, we do need a residency code eventually. And so we went ahead and put that into the membership code anyway. So there's that. And then in approximately 1990, we asked for a vote of the community. Some of you might remember that, and some might not. But when we asked for that vote of that membership code, we were just shy of getting that approved. So what I'm saying there, we could have had a membership code, we could have had a residency code back in 1990. Unfortunately, we didn't. So whatever those circumstances are, I'm not going to dwell on them. And we don't need to dwell on them. We need to move ahead. This day and age, we need a residency code. So we did draft another residency code later on in the, I think around, say, 15 years ago. And this residency code was basically a mirror to the other one that we had. It didn't really change very much. So it addressed the areas that we're looking at right now. We are looking at the right to reside. And we were looking at a loss of permit to reside, meaning you need a permit to reside. And that would be given by the council or by the membership clerk or whoever. But you needed a permit. So that's how we drafted this. And we're proposing that right now. We're going to look at it and put that into the draft and just see what you think about it. Because we do need feedback on this. So the other parts of it had a time limit, of course, time limit on the residency permit. We also have a section on denial of residency permit. We have non-renewal of a permit, and of course a renewal of a permit. And of course, when we talk about to revoke a permit, we start talking about what are those things that need to be incorporated in there to revoke a permit. What is there somebody doing something wrong, or what is it we need to revoke? Why do we need to revoke? So those situations are going to come, and even some days right now, people are saying, you need a residency code because we have too many so-called drug dealers coming in that are not members. Here we go. Now we're starting to introduce the problem of our drug issue in our community. And what's that going to do? It's going to, it's creating chaos in our community. So with the residency code, of course, we will try and eliminate that. And here's our first draft. We're working on this. We're going to look at perhaps even a membership board or some other means. It could even be council. But the draft that we're going to make is going to be something that you're going to look at, and perhaps something that I would like to see take place in Saugeen. Now that's two codes. That's a membership code and a residency code. So that kind of puts us in terms of who we are and what our status is. But something else that we need, it's been brought to our attention, it's been brought to your attention many, many times, and that's an election code. We also need an election code that will mesh with Chippewas of Nawash. Example, when they have a an election one year, we sit and watch, and then guess what? We have an election the following year. So they sit and watch. Progress, geez, that's really hard to come by when something like that happens. We've got to be on the same sync of working on issues, and we have a pile of issues to go through. Right now, we're just reacting to the couple of important issues that we're involved with, and you know what those are. That's the policing issues that we have, and we have, of course, the drug epidemic that we have. And then to top it all off, we have a COVID issue that's coming upon us. We don't have any cases in our community, but we got to be careful not to have any, because there's so much that's building up outside of the community against us. Those cities are really just racking up the numbers, and we really have to keep out of the cities in order to keep our community safe. So just a little quickie recap then. We need a residency code. We'll draft one up. We'll put it out there for you to look at, and we need your opinions, and we can move on some of those things. If there's some wordsmithing that's got to take place, well, again, we can work out those wordsmithing problems. Nothing's going to be perfect right offhand, but as long as we get something in place, then we can work out those wordsmithing exercises. The membership of code, this is a copy of the old membership code. We need that. And then, of course, the election code. This is where we've come from over all these years. And you know what? We've got many more years ahead of us. And let's not leave this one dangling, or, let's run with it. We really need to run with it. And this council is ready to go out and start working, and we need to do that. So let's look at this thing and not dwell on the real small issues of what's in the wording. We can work those out. It's not hard to do that. So look at this in a general outlook, and we can move on some of these things. So, miigwech kenigi mikidian gego ibzen doik, aha genim no api gabenan ligo, aha miigwech.
Thank you for that, Councillor. At this time, we're going to take a few-minute break. So during the break, by all means, feel free to ask some questions online. We're going to do our best to answer those questions tonight. Anything beyond that, we have the contact information and the names, so we'll provide a report back to those questions. So going forward, we're going to hear the next agenda item is an update again, elaboration on the policing issues, where we're at with current agreements and what future plans that we have for policing. And then to close us off, we're going to have the CEO, Ron Wells from CanCom Security, to come and provide a presentation on the services CanCom provides to this community. And then at the end, we will open up a question and answer period. Thank you.
Should really be putting that on, chief, you know that?
Okay. Well, thanks everybody for that brief break. We're going to keep moving right along. We're going to have an update now from Chief Anaquad around the policing issues. So welcome him back. Thank you.
Miigwech Dorn, first of all, I'd like to commend the council and leadership here today for the hard work we've done over the past couple of days regarding the strategic planning, dealing with opioid issues, addiction and mental health, some of the codes that need to be dealt with, and specifically policing. And Ron Wells is here to speak to the security that we currently have. But I just want to also acknowledge the women's shelter for the gift they give me today. Every child matters. Every person matters. Everybody was a child once. So, I mean, we talk about addictions and how we desensitize ourselves to people that have addictions. I know firsthand how it feels to lose someone to addiction. So it's something that dwells with you for all your life. So anyways, I'll put the shirt back. I remember my earliest remembrance of being of the police department was Oliver Coggy back in the days, and then I remember Herman Root was in the 70s, and then we moved on to the APS in I believe it was the 80s, late 80s, early 90s, yeah. And then unfortunately we left APS in was it 2006? Attempts were made by then Chief Randall Coggy to get back into APS. Since then, we've had the OPP give us what they can for policing with the limited resources, with what the province is to offer us. Having said that, we recognize the need for community-based policing. It's not just about enforcement of the law, but it's also recognizing the underlying issues that come with addictions, the issues of trauma, childhood, intergenerational trauma and grief, the crises that the communities seem to face on a daily basis. A lot of us have lost loved ones to the drugs, opioids specifically, and it's been a real hard pill to swallow as your leader. But I do commend the community members that have stepped up to the plate and that are working here and that are here today, the members of council that have dedicated themselves to provide a safer community, and that requires, when I say community, everyone's input. So our best solution for the current issue, to provide a police presence, not a police state, is to deter a lot of the unwanted illegal activity in the community by showing a police presence, by demonstrating it's not the Wild West, that there are police present. And we plan on working with the police department when it comes to cultural sensitivity, some Aboriginal issues and workshops to deal with a lot of the, I guess, just lack of information, lack of awareness that a lot of people don't have within the Native population. I mean, I said the story about if you see a drunken Native person, if that's all you see is a drunken Native person, you don't understand the underlying issues, why they are that way. The underlying issues of their childhood, some of the traumas that most everyone in their day-to-day lives couldn't comprehend living through and continuing to live through and continuing to struggle and survive all of those traumas that they've had. Residential school is a good place to start. My father was there, my mom was there, taken away as children, not not knowing how to parent when they came home. It's so that intergenerational trauma was passed down to me too. So, but having said that, we also have to take responsibility for our own healing as well. And that's what's happening with a lot of our community members that are struggling in their addictions. I realize it's tough to break the cycle. A lot of these opioids are stronger than your own willpower. I understand that. And you have not my sympathy, but my understanding and compassion. So it's not about just locking up the drug dealers or the drug addicts. It's dealing with the underlying issues of addiction. And policing will help with that, because I don't want people to see the police and feel threatened, and that's not what we would want with our own community-based policing. So we have a few options. I'm working diligently with a current contract with the OPP, which is to provide direct policing immediately, a dedicated detachment with a sergeant and officers. It'll be housed out of the fire department for the time being. Maybe we'll put up a trailer so they have their own facility. But these are some issues that we need to talk about with the community as well. Going forward into 2022 will be the first year of the Aboriginal Policing 5-year funding cycle. So we'll have the province and the federal government helping us with the funding of our own standalone police department. I believe it was called the Saugeen Police Department in the beginning. That's one option. I know there's been a petition going around wanting us to get back into Anishinaabe Police Service. That's another option. And there's also a regional policing option with Nawash, Saugeen Ojibwe Nation. That's a third option. And I'm sure there's others, and that's where we require community input. But in the interim, we also have CAMCOM Security helping us with our bylaw enforcement. We've sworn in security officers to be federal bylaw officers. They've done a diligent job of enforcing bylaws on our beach specifically. And they've done a good ticketing system there as well. So with that, I'll segue into CANCOM Security for you now, and I'm sure there'll be some questions afterwards. So with that, Chimigwech. Ron?
Igwej Gima. Good evening. It's a pleasure to be here. Thankful for the opportunity to speak and represent our members at CANCOM that are reside here in Saugeen. I'll just introduce myself for some of you that don't know who I am, just so you know the person who I founded CANCOM Security 12 years ago. I'm an Adawa member from Wikwemikong. My family background is well entrenched in policing. My granddad was the first special constable in Anishinaabe, special constable in Wikwemikong, and that's been slowly developed into what we know now as the Wikwemikong Tribal Police Service. Myself, have a military police background, municipal and bylaw enforcement background for the last 25 years. Since the inception of CANCOM Security here in Saugeen, we've had our challenges, and we've worked towards those challenges with great optimism and working here with the leadership of Saugeen. We've been, I believe, here about 5 years now, Lester. Is that about right? Approximately. And in that 5 years, we've moved towards recruiting, and specifically just from the community, and that's a very important piece, that the representatives of our security team are from Saugeen. We do have some outside members that live just outside Saugeen. However, the focus is to recruit our fellow Anishinaabe men and women here in Saugeen. So let's kind of go through the mandate and what our mission is here in Saugeen. There's sometimes a conflict of understanding the role of security versus policing. I'll make it clear that security is a tool that it includes policing. We're part of that umbrella of the community-based policing program. Again, that starts with a representation of the band membership here are employed with CANCOM, and those members are indoctrinated into a system that encompasses a recruiting system that there's a criminal background check, there's a minimum 40-hour entry licensing course, which covers the basics, the basic training. And then from there, we embark on a road training, field training, and that's where the real training takes place. And we'll get into that briefly as I go through my presentation here. So our mission statement is providing peace of mind to our clients through proactive security services while enhancing their personal safety and protecting their properties and proprietary information. Myself and our management team encompass over 250 years. I actually had added up the other day again. That's pretty accurate. With the 15 managers, we are a very experienced security team with, again, police and military backgrounds. So let's cover our mandate just so the community understands what CANCOM is here to do and what we're trying to accomplish in partnership with policing and the band administration. So the first thing is the observation, to observe. And that is done physically by providing a high profiled uniform presence in the community. That's important because if the individuals patrolling were patrolling in unmarked cars, no one would really know who they are. The very fact that they're in high profiled vehicles, their uniforms are distinguished, we know their security. And that alone acts as a deterrent, which is your next step of our mandate with high profile uniform presence. The next thing is what we observe is we report that. And we report that to the band administration. So statistics, reports are sent to different department heads or the band manager or the chief and council. And finally, to the local police service that we partner with. And we have a very strong partnership with the OPP here. They are in constant contact with our security members and team members in exchanging information, sensitive information, information that remains confidential. I'd like to point out that a lot of the actions taken and the participation in which our security members embark in remains confidential and cannot be spoken to or of. So a lot of the engagement that security participates in with police goes unnoticed. And there's a good reason for that because a lot of that information has remained confidential. I will say this, majority of the time, our security team members are first on scene on any critical incident here in the community. And their job is to manage the scene as emergency services are en route, keeping emergency services up to date as to what's happening at the scene at the time. They're usually the first ones to render first aid CPR. And we've had instances with overdoses in the community where we've successfully revived somebody who may not be here today. So a lot of these incidents sometimes go unrecognized, and we only recognize these members internally because of the sensitivity of the information. So I'd like to point out that, and if my team members are listening, I want to applaud you and thank you for what you do in this community. And I know the administration here appreciates what you do as well. They tell me every time we speak about what's going on in this community from time to time. We are a licensed entity through the province of Ontario, through the Ministry of Community Safety Correctional Services. WSIB, of course, we are insured. We're a recognized Canadian Aboriginal Minority Supplier Council member. One of our mandates is to work in First Nations communities, employ First Nations people as a priority, and train those individuals in career in security, whether it be management, systems, physical security. So if you're listening out there, we're recruiting nonstop. If you want to know how you can participate in this endeavor, this program, visit our website, reach out to me personally, or anybody. If you see security in the community, don't hesitate to stop them and ask them how to apply and get involved. And that's part of the community-based policing program, is getting involved. And if you want to help, get involved with the security program. It's a good way to help and get involved with the policing initiative in an indirect way. We've once again just introduced some of our team members. Myself, I got Ken Davies and Sean LaRue and Anthony Smith. Again, a tremendous depth of wealth of experience. Anthony is a former London Metro police officer that we recruited, is retired from the London Met Police Service, was one of the dedicated bodyguards to the Queen, believe it or not. So our group of expertise is very, very dedicated, and a wealth of knowledge in our organization, that's for sure. Getting back to the tools of the trade and the importance of marked vehicles. If you can see on the screen now, this is one of our typical marked vehicles. They come in different colors: black, we got blue, we got white. Specifically, we kind of mirrored OPP's look just to provide that extra presence. And that's done on purpose. I'll tell you that right now. That's we're not trying to be police. That's not what this is about. We want that effect. We want people to take a double look, knowing that they're being watched, or they're being surveyed. But the question is this, and I'll share a story. When we started our first program in Wikwemikong, we had 2 patrol cars and 2 ATVs running around. And the local kids said to us, "God, you guys are everywhere." And they felt harassed. So I took it upon myself to go in the community that night and met with the kids and the youth. And I took it upon myself to say, "Do you ever think that maybe we're not watching you because we think you're up to no good, but maybe we're watching you because we just want to make sure you're okay?" And that kind of just put a different spin on things. And that changed their mind and our relationship, because it took away that stigma of a uniform and the kids that traditionally were either being chased by security or chased by the police. So this kind of was a bit of an icebreaker. And what we did is we allowed the kids to stay in designated areas at night, because we knew some of those kids didn't want to go home. There was a reason why they didn't want to go home. That's why they were out. We recognized that. Our youth center in Wiki was closed at a certain time, and we were not in a position to house our youth. But as security, we kept an eye on them. We kept them in the skate park. We kept them under that big light in the ballpark. And between the police and ourselves, we all kept an eye on those kids. So it's not always about surveillance in that aspect. It's surveillance on making sure that our children are okay. Quite unique, because we have 5 kilometers of beachfront, is how to maneuver and exercise our way through the waterways here on the beachfront. And we've got now 2 Sea-Doos in the summer patrolling the beachfront. which comes into as a great tool. It's very handy. It allows us to approach boaters safely and get them to moor off more than 100 meters off the shoreline. Failing to do so, we can initiate trespass tickets, and we'll get into that after. And then we'll get into the concept of enforcement as an education piece and how we can use enforcement through our bylaws as an education of our treaty rights. So Sea-Doos that we found are the best tool. We do have a 30-foot boat, but trying to unmoor a 30-foot boat in that type of tide is quite challenging, especially when we had one incident 2 seasons ago. Someone was drowning, and it took about 3 minutes to unmoor our boat with the tide and the waves. Well, with the Sea-Doo, we would have been there instantly, so that's what taunted our decision to go with the Sea-Doos. And that's not a band initiative, that's CanCom equipment, just so you know. So that's our own initiative there to provide services on the beach. In addition to that, we have the ATVs patrolling the beach, keeping an eye on our beachfront. And the things that we see, we hear it all the time. We've heard concerns from the community. This is not an isolated, this is an ongoing issue. But we do listen, and the biggest challenge is you got 5 kilometers of beach, and as you got a barbecue at one end and you shut that one down, you got to rush to the other side. So we do listen, we do respond to the calls as quickly and as efficiently as possible, but I can quite honestly say our statistics are supporting the importance of the use of these ATVs, because it allows us to, especially with the beach now compromised, it's easier to maneuver up and down the beach with the waterways creeping up on the shorelines now. In regards to our fleet, question is, how do we supervise our fleet? Trust me, we've had complaints from band members about certain guards operating their vehicle unruly, and we have disciplined them. And how do we do that? We take action, reviewing our GPS tracked fleet. The fleet is tracked. Here's an actual still shot between Toronto and the Saugeen fleet. And having said that, we can track things like harsh driving, the vehicle's activity of how many hours the vehicle's worked, how long is it stopped, the total idle time, and the distance traveled. Here's a good one that we do have this technology, and we do have this ability. I wish I knew about this the other day, but I just found out there was a young 6-year-old boy that went missing in the woods. Had we known that, we could have engaged our drone in a search and rescue effort. It is equipped with a FLIR infrared camera, which is, that's what this drone's for, search and rescue. So we do have those on board. I'd like to get one dedicated here in Saugeen, but not that much to get. And to get one of the guards, or 2 of the guards, certified as pilots would be, I think, a great asset. It's great for support with the fire department as well, giving them an aerial shot. And what I love about this drone is when there is a suspect fleeing, we can actually have voice. We can actually communicate with the suspect over communications of the drone, voice over communications with the drone itself. So great tool to contain suspects and waiting for police. So again, our job is not to engage the suspects, but with the drone we could inadvertently track the suspect. Creating awareness of what else we can provide the community. We do have canine detection services. Now I'll reiterate very quickly, our dogs are not restraint or police or military dogs. Our dogs are strictly detection dogs, passive-aggressive dogs, meaning they sit when they detect either a narcotic or explosive device or firearm for that matter. We've used these with other First Nation communities. to do housing inspections to determine whether narcotics were present or not. It's just another tool. Again, it's there. We have that capability, but there's some rules of engagement that we have to afford to with the local police service. We monitor our patrols. Patrols can be monitored, so there's accountability there. So I just want to stress to the community that there is a lot of checks and balances with your security team. They're not just let loose. They can't just roam. They can't go park somewhere and go to sleep. If the car sits more idle than 30 minutes, we get an alert. And it's not because we want to catch them sleeping. We want to make sure they're okay. They're working alone. We radio them. We want to make sure that they're safe. Just a quick bird's eye view shot of our training curriculum. It's very inclusive. Our reports are live. Council or band manager can engage those reports at any time. Our bylaw enforcement process is initiated through the eyes of the Indian Act through Section 81. Where the Indian Act fails is it fails to tell us how to enforce our bylaws. Well, that's where we've come up with a very creative process in ticketing, either parking or bylaw enforcement through BCRs or Bound Council bylaws. So where the India Act fails, we come in with a process. So Chief and Council initiate and pass a bylaw, at which point we come up with a short form wording, very similar to police short form wording, but it's separate. The benefit of this ticketing system that we use is through the existing court system, except we call it a claim. We put a claim in as a damage. So let's say someone's dumping and they're not from here and they're dumping on our territory. We engage them, we ticket them, $500 fine. If they don't pay it, we engage them in small claims court. We recover our funds and damages that way. Very creative. Just an idea of what the equipment looks like. We've got an iPad, cellular link. The thermal printer prints out the ticket. It goes to the cloud. The individual then can pay it online. When they pay those funds, it actually comes right into the band bank account as an income. An idea of what the bylaw fines look like here right now in Saugeen. Here's what the tickets look like. The front of the tickets are on the right. The ticket on the left is the back of the ticket, which stipulates how they pay and why it's in their best interest to pay. If they fail to pay, we can take them to collections or initiate a small claims process and get our money that way, reclaim our damages. Again, the whole point of ticketing and enforcing too is not just to get money. The idea is to educate the public about our bylaws, our treaty rights, and that we are to be taken seriously. And I'll tell you, the staff have engaged quite a few people over the last 2 years on the beach and been issuing fines, and people are paying them. So that's a good sign. The next process that I'll be engaging our finance department on is the ones that are not getting paid. There's a lot of tickets now that are not getting paid. We can actually initiate the court process through a paralegal that we have sourced in Owen Sound. It won't come at cost to the band because it's based on a consignment, and we can retrace and recover our damages that way. So there has to be a little more training involved with the finance department and appointing somebody in finance that will help identify which fines are not being paid or recovered. And that's something that is the next phase of this process. So successful implementation and so forth. Okay. The last thing I'd like to conclude with is we do have alarm systems. The idea here is to provide affordable monitoring and alarm systems. We've had one case here, and I can't disclose who or where, but an individual who suffered as a victim of domestic violence. We implemented a donated panic system to their residence. And it was actioned at one point, and successfully we arrived within minutes of them activating the panic system. So I just want the community to know that these things are available. We're just trying to develop how to process the installation through an individual at the band office that can help administer the process on how these can be implemented. So, homes that are unattended, domestic violence, elderly living alone, and deter break and enters are the sole purpose of that system. And that, again, we're usually first on scene. In this case, when the domestic violence panic system was activated, we were on scene within less than a minute. Last but not least, this is something that we'll take up with council on another team, but this the ability of implementing solar cellular cameras in the community would be very cost effective in installing, providing set of eyes at the major entranceways to the community and being able to monitor activities coming in and out of the community. What I love about this system, you could pretty much put it anywhere. It works off a cellular system. It's powered by solar. You don't have to run cables and power and install major infrastructure. And it's managed either by the local police, ourselves, or a band designate representative to assist with it. We just installed 2 up in Cape Croker at their 2 COVID checkpoints, and it's working. It's working very well. I'd conclude just to say that I'm proud of the members that are engaged in CANCOM, that are from Saugeen and are seen as a great asset to this community and partners in representing the community and the community policing engagement and working with the OPP. So I'm concluding my presentation. I hope this helps in terms of providing community members with broader insight as to what we offer to the community. And that's not just employment, but it is true community engagement with our own band members that are engaged in working closely with the police service and reporting to same. Thank you. Have a great evening.
Bear with me for 1 second. I'm just going to move some stuff around and we'll jump right into our Q&A session now. So we have a lot of very good questions, and I thank the community for that. We're going to try and answer a few of them, broken down by the subject. We've got enforcement, we've got the residency code, and health. So if I could, what I'm going to do is I'll ask the questions, and I'll ask Councillor Vern Root, Chief Anaquat, and Ron to just be close here. So I'll ask the question, and then people can answer. I'm going to call Priscilla as well because there's a few questions here. Let me get started. Bear with me for 1 second. Okay, so I think what I will start with. Hi, Priscilla. We're just in the Q&A session now. So I have you on speaker, and we're going to start maybe with some health questions. So okay. I'm going to go. There was a really great comment. So there's some comments in here, and there's some questions. We're going to get to a few of them per section, and then as a follow-up, we will provide all the written comments to the community membership, and then that'll be accessible to everybody.
Perfect.
So there's a comment, where is it? Will we get more funding for NADAP to hire more counselors, more treatment centers in other areas? CAMH is one thing that is helping for our people right now. So, and again, I think you touched base on that, but I think that's a great question.
Yes, we are looking at different funding sources in relation to the mental health and addictions program. And so, yeah, that is in the works right now.
Okay, great. Another question regarding health. What can we do about all the needles laying around in the community and the bush trails? Maybe put out some needle disposal units and maybe a needle exchange program. Can you comment on that? Hi, Priscilla.
And
Oh, sorry. I think I lost you.
okay, so we do currently have a needle exchange program in Saugeen. And actually, I had a meeting about that this afternoon in relation to who oversees that program and like the needle, picking up these bins, disposing them, and because there's protocols, there's guidelines that need to be followed.
Right.
So we are currently looking into that. But for the community in relation to finding needles, so they can call to the health center, and we can get our community health nurse or our community health rep to retrieve that needle and safely dispose of it.
Okay, great. And I'm assuming that, we'll provide a fulsome response to that with the follow-up questionnaire. The final question I have for now is, can you speak more about the wellness center?
Okay, so the wellness center, so how it came about is apparently the RAM clinic had approached the leadership on 2 separate occasions. And when I came on board as the health director, this proposal came on my desk, and I reviewed it, and I thought this was an excellent initiative for the community in addressing to help combat the drug epidemic that we have in our community. And I took it a little bit further in relation to, it's just not going to be a RAM clinic, it's going to be a wellness center. So we are going to utilize the current resources that we have, because this wellness center is going to be a client-centered approach initiative. So it's going to focus on the client and the families, and it's going to be like a wraparound program.
Okay, great. Excellent. I think those are the questions for now. There was a few other comments too about what can we do about non-members, people that are coming to the community and selling drugs. I think that's a collective question and comment. I think that we will respond to.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yes, it is.
And there's a final comment too regarding health, is that we need all health and social programs, and I would say even chief and council and the community working in tandem to deal with this. And I think that's a great comment from our viewers.
Yes.
So I'm going to keep you on the line, Priscilla, just in case there's a few more other comments here, but I'm going to switch over to the code questions now.
Okay.
So there's a very neat question here. There's a translation request to have this or parts of it in Anishinaabemowin. So that's something we can work on. Now, in terms of the residency code, I think I'd provide just on what Councillor Root said, is that we have a draft residency code, I believe, and that this is one of those subjects that we need to continue working on in tandem with our other codes that we're working on now. So your chief and council have been spending the last couple of days reviewing all these existing codes and policies, and we're trying to get our heads wrapped around what are the next steps. And again, more information to come. So there is a comment regarding it says, I understand that Nawash has their residency code in place. Is it possible that we review theirs and apply some of what they have? So I'll let Chief Anaquat explain that.
Okay. the question was, the residency code for Nawash is up and running. We would simply ask if we could review their code, adopt some of the relevant issues that are there within their code, and then work towards maybe harmonizing some of, like former Chief Vern had alluded to, harmonizing some of our policies and procedures and lining them up with our neighboring community of Nawash. So we'll definitely put a call out to Nawash and see if we can view their residency code and see what we can apply to what we have here. Definitely.
So this is another question. I think I'll just refer to Councillor Root here. Is that, are we still under the Indian Affairs Residence Code? Can you elaborate a little bit on that one?
Yes, we are under Indian Affairs, and it's the Indian Act that we're under. Whatever the Indian Act states, that's what we must follow. And I think this is an opportune time for us to start the mechanism to remove ourselves from the Indian Act and just kind of look at our own feelings and our own thoughts and how we want to put things together. So yes, we're well and alive under the Indian Act. I sure hope that in due time we get rid of some of those portions of the Indian Act and start putting in some of our own laws.
Thanks for that, Councillor. So I'm going to move along to a few questions regarding policing. This is a great question, I think. What are the challenges with policing options that the chief has mentioned? Is it budgets, timeframes, resources, et cetera, et cetera?
The restraints basically are a culmination of a lot of issues. Specifically, we need to draft our own funding agreement with the province and the federal government going forward in the 2022. Mark Gibson from PST Law is working with us on that. But I also know going forward that the community needs to provide some input on to what kind of policing we want in the community. Do we then we can shape what our funding arrangement would be going forward in 2022. Such issues as cultural sensitivity training as being a mandatory piece of police officers working in the community. Those types of initiatives that we used to have with youth involvement. There was canoeing, biking, hiking. That was an integral part of the policing. So they were interacting with the children and the youth, and they were providing not just enforcement, but also they were shaping the future for some of these young people that have gone on to be police officers themselves. But some of the issues, I guess, some of the constraints has just basically been a challenge going forward as to what direction we would like to head in the policing field. Do we want to have a standalone? Those are some of the questions that need to be answered first. And then we can shape our agreement with the province and the federal government. We'll have to actually probably put some of our own money in as well. But if we want to have a detachment. So the only thing holding us back is our willingness to work together and make it happen. So we'll see to it that it happens. Thank you.
There's a question for CanCom, and again, I have to express that there's a lot of great questions here, and we're conscious of the time, and I'll close off on just a couple more questions here for Ron. Is there an opportunity to create youth engagement with CanCom to encourage a positive relationship, stronger communication, and possible mentorship for the future job perspectives?
That's a great question. The answer is yes, absolutely. I think it's needed. It's necessary. I'd like to see us work with potentially, I guess, the youth center and putting together a camp. And that camp would be, I've done something similar in Toronto with the Toronto Housing Authority when I was working with the municipal contingency there. And what we did is we had weekend camps every weekend with the youth, and we did all kinds of different activities. But I remember one of the activities we did, which was fantastic, was the graffiti removal program. And in that program, we would go through the neighborhood and eradicate all the graffiti. And it was kind of cute because every once in a while a kid would pipe up and say, "Oh, that's mine." And I said, "Well, that's too bad. Wash it off." But it created that sense of pride in taking ownership of their community. And I've got tons of ideas. So the answer is absolutely. And the other spin-off to this is security is a great stepping stone to get into policing. I look at my team, our team, there's key individuals on that team that should apply if and when the opportunity comes for a standalone police service here. I strongly believe that whatever or how we go about instilling another police service here, that it should be representative of this community. And I'd be proud to say, you know, our members from the security team could apply and embark on that. And then that, engaging youth to participate in security. And my experience with that is sometimes youth don't really think about that. And when they're exposed to that environment and they're working with security, they're working around police, that sometimes charms them to think, well, maybe I could do this. So absolutely, I think that's, the answer is yes, absolutely. Let's make it happen.
Thank you for that, Ron. So in closing, there's been a lot of questions. Again, you know, what's NAWASH doing? What are the timeframes for community consultation on the different codes and the different policies that we need to, you know, approve and set in motion? So this is the very first kick at the can. We understand and realize that it's a virtual meeting. We want to hear your feedback on how this went. Rest assured, community, there's going to be a lot of community meetings and a lot of input required. Our mission this term is to work with the community, listen to the community, and take what the community said and then bring those back into play. So with that having said, there is a tremendous amount of work, and we thank you for your patience. We're listening, we're hearing you, and rest assured, we're going to move this community together, and we're going to move forward. And with that, I want to say chimigwech to everybody. I want to thank CTRE Productions for assisting us today and providing the information. In the next week or two, hopefully we'll get all these questions out in detail. So having said that, I want to thank everybody for their time. So chimigwech, bamapi guaman. Thank you.
Miigwech, Pamapi.